The grand assembly chamber was quieter than usual. Screens lined the circular walls, each filled with the grim faces of representatives from hundreds of systems. Every delegate watched as the Yulari swarm's progress was displayed across the galaxy map in red bright dots, blinking out colonies and trade routes as they swept from the galactic edge inward. The Yulari were not invaders in the traditional sense. They didn't take territory. They consumed its strip-mining planets, hollowing moons, draining stars. Where they passed, life did not return. The assembly had called for unity. Every species pledged ships, weapons, and warriors to stand together. Then came Earth's response. Humanity offers. One vessel, the announcement echoed across the chamber. A long silence followed. Then murmurs, then outright laughter. One. Just one ship. Scoffed High Lord Menvok of the Garai. Is it a diplomatic envoy? No, the AI moderator. Confirmed. The United Human Systems have dispatched a single warship. Designation UHS, Resolute. Estimated arrival 32 hours. Admiral Threx of the Drail Confederacy narrowed his eyes. He'd studied Earth's history. He'd seen what humans had done in their rise to space. But even for them, this seemed absurd. One ship, he muttered. They either overestimate themselves or know something we don't. The Resolute arrived precisely on time. It did not emerge with ceremony. There was no escort, no grand display, no anthem playing across channels. It simply appeared, gliding out of a hyperspace corridor like a shadow moving through still water. Its design was strange, smooth, seamless, devoid of the sharp fins and weapons arrays common among other fleets. Its hull was a deep gray that seemed to absorb nearby light. Across one side, faint white lettering read, UHS Resolute. Its arrival caused a stir across the command fleet. Curiosity turned to confusion. No known scans could penetrate the hull. No obvious weapons could be identified. No energy signatures matched any galactic standard. Is that even a warship? Asked Commander Velen of the Talari Dominion, Captain. Aaron Voss appeared on the main comm channel, human.com. Unassuming, we are here to assist, she said. Assist, replied Admiral Threx sharply. With respect, Captain, we are facing an existential threat. We've deployed 600 ships your people have sent. 1. That's correct, Voss replied evenly. Threx frowned. Is this a gesture, a symbol? Or are we to believe your vessel holds something we don't understand? Captain Voss didn't answer immediately. You called for help. We responded. The Resolute is prepared. The line went quiet. The Assembly's fleet was soon ordered. To mobilize, the Yulari had been spotted approaching Neelan, a mid-tier planet with critical manufacturing facilities and millions of inhabitants. The swarm moved faster than expected. Hundreds of assembly ships raced to intercept. The Resolute stayed behind. More complaints followed. Sent messages questioning humanity's sincerity. Others suggested Earth should be expelled from the Alliance, but Admiral Threx, curious despite his frustration, sent a scout drone to observe the human ship. The drone signal was clear, but what it showed confused even the most seasoned analysts. The Resolute appeared to be scanning the battle zone with technology beyond current classification. Its data link streamed raw enemy behavior patterns, predictive modeling, and route calculations no other AI could generate. Then came the first clash at Nail. On it was brutal. Assembly ships collided with Yulari formations in chaotic waves. Their enemies shifted, morphed, and overwhelmed cruisers by sheer volume and speed. Dozens of vessels went silent in minutes. Defenses crumbled. Then, without a word, the Resolute moved. One ship. Alone it entered the war zone without activating shields or weapons at least. None the sensors could detect. And then, The Yulari began to fall. They weren't destroyed, they simply vanished. Burst into patterns of light, flickered, and faded. Their connections were disrupted. Their hive mind split. No explosion, no debris. Just silence within 8 minutes. The entire enemy force had retreated, and in their place, the Resolute hovered, untouched and quiet. Admiral Threx stared at the monitor. His voice was barely a whisper. Only one ship. Kalon, watching from the lower deck, finished the thought. Might be all they ever needed. The battle at Nilon left the assembly fleet shaken, not just because they'd been caught off guard by the Alura's strength, but because one human ship, had turned the tide in mere minutes. But while some praised the Resolute, others were uneasy. Back aboard the Drellcass, Admiral Threx paced the command deck, watching replays of the engagement. He'd seen hundreds of battles in his lifetime. None resembled what the Resolute had done. The Yulari weren't destroyed in the usual way. They had unraveled, as though some unseen thread holding them together had snapped. There were no energy spikes, no blast signatures. They didn't even target individual ships, said Kalon, standing beside him. The young Zalari officer had requested access to the human data logs, but found most of the files encrypted beyond assembly clearance. Then how did they neutralize the swarm? Threx asked. No one had an answer. Several assembly commanders met. In a private channel, the room was filled with suspicion. Some accused Earth of withholding critical technology. Others feared that humans had developed something dangerous, something the assembly couldn't control. They've gone too far, said High Lord Menvok. One ship should not possess that kind of power. But not all were ready to condemn. Commander Velen of the Telleri Dominion defended the humans. They acted when we couldn't. They saved Nilon. Maybe we should be asking what we can learn from them, not how to limit them. Meanwhile, back aboard the Resolute, Captain Aren Voss met privately with her AI interface, known only as Hera. Unlike most ship AIs, Hera did not have a face or a projected voice. It was felt present in the lighting, the atmosphere, the movement of displays. Status. Voss asked. Fleet. Communications indicate growing tension, Hera replied. Several commanders suspect subversion. Let them. Are you certain? Transparency might reduce distrust. Voss turned toward the main viewport. The stars outside were calm now, but they wouldn't stay that way. The moment they understand what this ship can truly do, someone will try to take it. Hera remained silent. She knew Voss was right. Elsewhere in the system, a Drell reconnaissance team requested permission to dock with the Resolute for inspection. Officially, it was routine, meant to improve cooperation. In truth, the assembly wanted to know what the humans were hiding. To everyone's surprise, Voss approved the visit. A small team of scientists and officers were allowed aboard. What they saw left them stunned. The interior of the Resolute was far from standard. The corridors weren't lined with weapon mounts or crew quarters. Instead, they were filled with deep neural links, living architecture, and fluid-based computing cores that adapted in real time. This isn't a ship, one Drell technician whispered. It's something else. They discovered that the Resolute mapped threats in dimensions they couldn't track, processed strategy faster than any assembly command ship, and could execute maneuvers no physical crew could withstand because most of the ship was controlled through thought. More precisely, Voss's thought. Back aboard the Drellcass, Kalon reviewed the preliminary scans and spoke to Threx quietly. The Resolute is built for exactly one thing, Kalon said. It's not a battleship. It's not even a deterrent. It's a response. A response to what? Kalon hesitated. To extinction. Threx sat back in his chair, the weight of those words settling in. Earth had not come to flaunt power. Oh, they had come to end a war before it began. Still, Many within the assembly did not trust what they didn't understand, as another Yulari fleet blinked onto long-range sensors. Moving toward the outer colonies, the assembly once again scrambled its armadas, and just like before, the Resolute remained. Still, waiting, Captain Voss sat in the command chair. "Calm. They'll need us again," she said. Hera answered softly. "They always do." Days passed in tense quiet. The assembly's armada held its positions near the outer colonies, bracing for the inevitable second wave of the Alari swarm. But the Resolute did not join the fleet. Instead, it drifted silently in the shadows of an unremarkable asteroid field, a lone sentinel watching from afar. Admiral Threx found himself drawn to the human ship's behavior, unable to shake a growing sense of unease and grudging respect. The Resolute had done what hundreds of ships could not. It had shattered the Alaris's advance without firing a traditional weapon. During briefings, Threx noted whispers among his officers. They say the Resolute reads the swarm's hive mind. They claim it can predict Yulari movements before they happen. Some dismiss such talk as rumor, but none could deny the facts. One morning, as Threx reviewed strategic data, his comm panel buzzed unexpectedly. The signal was human. "Admiral Captain Voss wishes to speak privately." On screen, Threx responded. Voss's face appeared, calm and unreadable. "Admiral Threx, I understand your fleet has questions." "We do," Threx admitted. "Many questions. Why send one ship? What powers does the Resolute hold? And most importantly, what's your endgame?" Voss smiled faintly. "The galaxy is on the brink of collapse. Our people have faced extinction before. We do not waste resources on symbolism. The Resolute is not a symbol, it's a catalyst. A catalyst to force change. To break the Yulari cycle, you rely on overwhelming force. Numbers, attrition, but the swarm adapts quickly. Our ship is designed to change the battlefield in ways you cannot yet see." Threx narrowed his eyes. "Are you saying the Resolute holds some form of secret weapon? More than weaponry?" "Our ship interfaces with biological systems ultra-fast. Neural networks that interface with enemy swarm algorithms. It disrupts coordination at the source without direct combat." Threx was silent for a moment. "You say you can disrupt the Alaris hive mind. That's a power we never imagined." "Is not power," Voss replied steadily. "It's understanding." The call ended. Later, Threx gathered his senior staff. "The humans bring something new, something we must understand. We cannot treat the Resolute as just another ship." Kalen nodded. "Their technology isn't just advanced, it's different. In principle, it melds machine and mind in ways no other species has." The officers debated the implications. Trust was fragile. Some feared the human's secretive nature. Others recognized the urgent necessity. Meanwhile, aboard the Resolute, Captain Voss reviewed the latest intelligence feeds. The Yulari were regrouping. The first retreat was tactical, not defeat. The swarm was massing on several fronts, preparing to strike at the heart of the assembly's supply lines. Voss convened her small command team. "We don't just fight the Yulari with weapons," she explained. "We break their networks, disrupt their communication, force them into chaos." Her lieutenant, an expert in alien neurotech, added, "Once the swarm's hive mind fractures, they become vulnerable, easier to isolate and eliminate." Voss's gaze was steady. "That is our mission." The Resolute shifted course toward a cluster of vital outposts recently attacked by the swarm. The assembly fleets mobilized to follow, unsure whether to welcome or resist the lone human ship's maneuvers. Back on Nelan, civilians watched the skies, hopeful yet fearful. They'd heard rumors of the humans' mysterious ship. Some called it a miracle. Others whispered of a new danger. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Voss stared ahead, the weight of 1,000 lives on her shoulders. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly. The Resolute moved with a grace that unsettled even the most experienced officers watching from the Assembly's command stations. It slipped through the asteroid field like a shadow, warping sensor readings and baffling enemy scouts. The ship's silence was almost a presence calm before a storm. Admiral Threx stood on the bridge of the Drokas, eyes fixed on the flickering images of the approaching Yulari fleets. The swarm's numbers were growing again, their advance methodical, ruthless. The fleet needed more than brute strength to survive. A calm alert interrupted his thoughts. "Admiral, Captain Voss requests permission to engage ahead of fleet orders." Threx hesitated, then nodded. Granted. Moments later, the Resolute activated its engines and surged forward alone to the edge of the swarm's gathering forces. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Assembly had ever witnessed. Instead of firing volleys of energy weapons or launching missile barrages, the Resolute emitted a low, pulsing field. It was subtle but immediate. Yulari vessels closest to the ship began to shudder. Their forms, usually fluid and adaptive, flickered as if caught in a web of invisible strings. Coordination broke down. Commands from the hive mind failed to reach peripheral units. Panic spread through the swarm. Admiral Threx watched in disbelief as dozens of Yulari ships slowed, detached from the main force, and drifted aimlessly. "Is this some kind of psychic weapon?" Kalen asked, eyes wide. "Not psychic," Threx said slowly. "Technological. They are hacking the swarm's biology, breaking their links." The Resolute's crew worked in unison. Neural interface pods lit up. Algorithms shifted in real time. Captain Voss's connection to the ship deepened up. Dance of thought and machine. The swarm was unraveling. But the Yulari were not defeated yet. From the depths of the swarm, monstrous vessel emerged, larger, more complex than the others. Its form shimmered, constantly reshaping. It was the swarm's command node, a living fortress. The Resolute altered course instantly. "This is it," Voss said. "We disrupt that node, the swarm falls apart." The ship systems hummed louder. HERAS voice, soft but certain, filled the bridge. "Preparing neural breach sequence. Warning, high risk of feedback." Voss nodded. "Proceed." Hey. The Resolute edged closer. The breach sequence fired waves of disruptive energy streaming into the node. The Yulari vessel convulsed, its shape destabilizing. Suddenly, a pulse of energy surged back. Alarms blared, neural feedback systems overloading. A crew member shouted. Voss clenched her fists, forcing her mind to steady the ship's core. Pain flashed behind her eyes, memories of past battles, losses, and sacrifices, but she held firm. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then the node collapsed, imploding inward. The swarm's forces shattered like glass. The Resolute drifted free. Systems straining but intact. Back on the Drellcas, cheers erupted. The Yulari advance had been broken again. Yet, in the shadows of victory, Threx sensed a warning. "This fight is far from over," he muttered. "Calen agreed. "They've shown their power, but the cost was high. What else can that ship endure?" Meanwhile, Captain Voss looked toward the distant stars. "This is the moment they remember us," she said softly. The victory at the edge of the swarm sent ripples through the assembly. The Resolute had once again demonstrated its uncanny ability to dismantle what seemed unbreakable. But admiration was not unanimous. In the Grand Assembly chamber, voices rose in heated debate. Are we to hand over our survival to a single human ship? High Lord Menvoke thundered. They refuse to share their technology or their methods. This secrecy threatens our alliance. Without the Resolute, we would have lost entire systems, Commander Velen countered. Their ship is not just an asset, the key to turning this war around. But suspicion lingered like a shadow. Behind closed doors, Admiral Threx met with other fleet leaders. "We need full transparency from the humans," he said. "Their technology surpasses ours in ways we barely understand. It's time we asked for more." Kalen, ever curious, nodded. "If we combine their capabilities with our fleets, we might finally push the Yulari back." But when a delegation was sent to request cooperation, Captain Voss responded with surprising calm. "We are not withholding to undermine trust," she explained. "The Resolute is unique, and its systems are intimately linked to human neural patterns. Sharing access risks more than technology, it risks lives." The assembly leaders were left with no choice but to accept for now. Meanwhile, on board the Resolute, the crew worked tirelessly. The ship's neural interface demanded constant focus from Voss, who found herself increasingly isolated. Her mind was tied to the ship's core, sensing every flicker of enemy movement, every pulse of the network. It was exhausting physically and mentally. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Yarek, approached cautiously one evening. "Captain, you need rest. This connection is wearing you thin." Shook her head. "If I disconnect, the Resolute loses its edge. The Yulari won't wait." Yarek frowned. "But if you burn out, what then? We need you sharp." Voss looked out the viewport, the distant stars cold and indifferent. There's no room for weakness. Back on the Drellcast, Kalen studied the recent data feeds. The Yulari were adapting. They were beginning to shield their neural links, creating redundancies that blunted the Resolute's disruptive fields. "We've won battles," Kalen reported to Threx, "but the war is shifting. The Yulari evolve faster than we anticipated." Threx rubbed his chin. "If the humans' advantage wanes, what next?" At the same time, a new threat emerged, not from the swarm, but within. Some assembly factions, wary of humanity's growing influence, began covertly developing countermeasures. They feared the Resolute's technology could one day be turned against them. Whispers of sabotage reached Captain Voss. Minor system anomalies, unexplained glitches, nothing that could not be repaired. But enough to cause concern. HERAS diagnostic. Protocols flagged unusual access attempts within the ship's core. Captain Skara said, "There are unauthorized intrusions. Possible sabotage." Voss's eyes narrowed. "Someone doesn't want us to succeed." She convened her trusted officers. "We face enemies on all fronts," she said. "The Yulari outside, and doubt within. We must remain vigilant." The crew tightened security. Surveillance was increased, but trust was fraying. One evening, Kalen contacted Voss covertly. "Captain, if you want to survive, you must prepare for betrayal." Voss met Kellen's gaze, understanding the weight behind the warning. "This is bigger than the war," she said. "It's about who controls the future." As the Yulari regrouped for their deadliest strike yet, the Resolute remained humanity's solitary spear. But with enemies gathering inside the assembly, and the captain's mind stretched thin by her bond with the ship, the question hung heavy in the air. Could one ship-hund one woman carry the fate of countless worlds alone? The tension within the assembly grew as the Yulari prepared their most devastating offensive yet. Intelligence reports painted a grim picture. Entire sectors on the verge of collapse. Supply lines severed and colonies under siege. The fleet needed a miracle, and the Resolute was all they had. Captain Aaron Voss felt the strain. The bond between her mind and the ship deepened every day, blurring the boundaries of self. Memories, thoughts, even emotions of the crew seemed to merge with hers. Rest became a distant memory, and the ship was a constant hum in her consciousness. One night, In the dimly lit command deck, Voss reviewed security logs with Hera. "There's a pattern," Hera said softly. "Sabotage attempts are increasing. Intrusions come from within the assembly fleet." Voss's jaw tightened. "Internal. Betrayal. I feared as much." Suddenly, the comm panel flickered. An encrypted message arrived, marked with the seal of a high-ranking assembly official, yet its contents were chilling. "Cease cooperation with the Resolute. Humanity's intentions are unknown. Their ship's power threatens us all. Recall?" The vessel immediately. The message left no room for negotiation. Voss frowned. "They want us gone." Hera's voice was calm but firm. "Captain, the war is not just on the battlefield." Voss nodded. "Prepare for deception and confrontation." She gathered her trusted officers, their faces tense. "We are alone in more ways than one. The Assembly's unity is fractured. They fear our power. We must be ready for anything." Lieutenant Yarrick spoke up. "What about the fleet? Without support, we risk being overwhelmed." Voss's eyes met his. "Then we fight smarter. We use what the Resolute was built for: disruption, precision, unpredictability." Meanwhile, Admiral Threx convened a secret meeting with commanders. "Loyal to the Assembly's survival, we cannot afford infighting," he said gravely. "But we must be cautious of those who would use the Resolute for their own gain." Kalen looked to him. "How do we balance trust and caution?" Sighed. "By remembering what's at stake. Unity is our only hope." Back on the Resolute, a sudden alert shattered the fragile calm. "Unknown vessel approaching," reported the sensors officer. The ship's exterior visuals showed a sleek craft. Assembly design but unannounced. "Boarding party detected." The tactical officer warned. Voss rose swiftly. "Prepare for hostiles. Lock down critical systems." The ship's corridors echoed with the rapid footsteps of intruders, armed soldiers. Seeking to disable the Resolute, Voss tapped into the ship's neural network, rallying defensive protocols. "Crew, secure your stations. We're not giving them this ship." In a series of swift maneuvers, the Resolute isolated sections of the vessel, cutting power and access. A tense standoff ensued as Voss faced the boarding force leader in the command deck. "Captain Voss," the intruder said coldly, "you are ordered to surrender the Resolute immediately." Voss met the gaze without flinching. "This ship serves humanity and those who fight for survival, not political games." The standoff broke when Hera initiated a localized energy pulse, disabling the intruder's weapons without harming the crew. The boarding party retreated, and the Resolute sealed all internal defenses. Breathing heavily, Voss turned to her officers. "This war isn't just against the swarm," she said. "It's against fear, suspicion, and those who would tear us apart from within." The ship hummed quietly, as if in agreement. Outside, the stars awaited the next move. The Yulari were coming. The tension aboard the Resolute was palpable, but Captain Voss refused to let doubt settle into despair. The betrayals, the sabotage attempts, the political fractures, it was all part of the cost of being the unexpected linchpin in a war so vast it spanned entire star systems. Yet she and her crew had endured worse. They would endure this. Outside the ship's reinforced hull, the Olari swarm gathered like a storm, darkening the skies. Their numbers were greater than ever, bolstered by new, terrifying, bioengineered vessels, hulking, grotesque monstrosities that pulsed with alien energy. This would be their greatest test yet. Admiral Threx, watching from his flagship, knew the stakes. The Assembly's fleets, though vast, could not hold the swarm without the unique advantage the Resolute offered. It was time to coordinate their efforts. A tactical conference was called, with Voss joining via encrypted hololink. The room was filled with tension and urgency. "Captain Voss," Threx began, "we've managed to hold several key outposts. But the swarm's next target is the core supply nexus. If they take it, the entire assembly crumbles. Voss nodded. I've been analyzing the swarm's hive patterns. They're centralized around a massive neural cluster embedded in that sector. If we disrupt it, we break their command and control. Kalen added, your ship's ability to interface with the swarm's neural network will be critical. Threx's gaze was firm. We will support you with every resource we have. The plan was bold. The Resolute would infiltrate deep into swarm territory and deliver a decisive strike to the neural cluster, while assembly fleets engaged swarm forces to draw attention away. Voss studied the star maps. The path was fraught with danger-dense asteroid fields, intense energy storms, and enemy patrols. But hesitation was not an option. The Resolute slipped away from the fleet, threading a delicate course through the hazards. Voss's mind was one with the ship, every sensor, every system tuned to a razor's edge. As they neared the neural cluster, the swarm's defenses became brutal. Waves of biomechanical fighters surged to intercept. The Resolute's unique fields shattered their coordination, sending pockets of enemies into chaos. Inside the ship, the crew moved with synchronized precision. Fueled by determination and trust, Voss prepared the neural breach sequence, a complex maneuver that would send a pulse into the cluster, severing its connections. It was the culmination of everything they had fought for. Hera's voice was calm, ready to initiate breach. Do it, Voss commanded. The ship thrummed as the sequence began, sending ripples through the swarm's network. The massive cluster flickered and convulsed, its control over the swarm weakening. But the cost was immediate. A violent shockwave erupted from the cluster, hitting the Resolute with full force. Systems faltered. Lights flickered. Hull integrity compromised. Alarms blared. Voss gritted her teeth, pushing through the pain and fatigue. The connection between her mind and the ship blurred, threatening to overwhelm her senses. Hold steady, she urged. We finish this with one final surge. The neural cluster collapsed. The swarm lost cohesion. Fighters turned on each other, and massive vessels faltered. Back at the fleet, Threx saw the effect instantly. The swarm's advance slowed, then reversed. Cheers erupted, but Threx held his silence, watching the battlefield with cautious hope. The Resolute limped back through the chaos, battered but unbroken. On board, Voss collapsed into a chair, exhausted beyond measure. Lieutenant Yarrick approached. You did it, Captain. You saved us all. Voss managed a tired smile. No, we did it. But even in victory, her thoughts were heavy. The war was far from over. The price of survival was steep, and the future uncertain as the stars stretched. Endlessly ahead, one truth remained clear. The human ship, their single mysterious weapon, had changed the course of history, and humanity was not done yet. The battlefield grew quiet. The once imposing swarm now drifted in disarray, their relentless advance shattered by the Resolute's decisive strike. The Assembly's fleets pushed forward, reclaiming lost worlds and securing fragile peace in the war-torn sectors. Captain Arn Voss sat alone in the ship's command center. The hum of the Resolute now a steady, gentle pulse instead of the sharp urgency of battle. Her mind still lingered in the neural bond with the ship, but the intensity had eased. Relief washed over her, brief and tentative. Admiral Threx's message arrived via encrypted channel. Captain, the Assembly owes you more than words can express. Your courage and sacrifice have saved millions. But questions remain. Why only one ship? Why a single human vessel in the vast armada? Voss allowed herself a faint smile. Because sometimes, she replied, one is enough. The Resolute was more than a ship, it was a symbol, a testament to human adaptability, resilience, and the strength born of unity between mind and machine. The fleet's leaders now understood that it was not sheer numbers, but ingenuity, trust, and sacrifice that would determine the war's outcome. But the victory was bittersweet. The war had cost many lives, both human and assembly alike. The fragile alliances forged in desperation would need careful tending to endure. Voss stood and walked to the viewport, watching the stars stretch on endlessly. This ship, this bond, she whispered to herself. It changed everything. But it's only the beginning. Her second in command, Lieutenant Yarrick, entered quietly. "What's next, Captain?" She looked back at him, eyes sharp and clear. "We rebuild. We learn and we prepare. Because peace is never guaranteed." Outside the window, new fleets formed. Scientists and engineers worked to replicate the Resolute's neural interface, hoping to multiply its power across the Assembly's forces. Humanity's place among the stars was no longer a question of survival, it was one of leadership, the Assembly, and humanity. Once wary allies, now faced the future as partners. A new chapter was beginning. But for Captain Voss and her crew, the greatest victory was the knowledge that, even when sent alone, one ship, one human spirit could tip the scales of history. The Resolute's legacy would echo through the stars for generations, and no enemy, no matter how vast or terrifying, would ever underestimate humanity again.